What's up, guys? Looking back over the last couple of years of my life, I think lots of the motivation for what I was doing was partly to grow my power. It came out of insecurity, and I wanted to become a more powerful person. I wanted to impress people. For example, I started to go to the gym a ton when I was 19, and I loved going to the gym, but lots of my motivation for that was actually to impress girls and to grow my self-power, or even the whatever prank channel. I loved doing the pranks and the social experiments at first, but later on I think I started to base my confidence and happiness growing subscribers, growing views, and I was doing it to grow my power, to feel good about myself, to impress people. And I just had lots of realizations this last year about power. I really like to think about power, and I just wanted to share some Alan Watts audio about power to you guys. And there's really two main motivating factors in life: whether you do things for power, to grow your ego, or whether you do things for love. And I think Alan Watts kind of beautifully explains this idea of power and how you should think about power, and he really breaks down some really cool concepts for you guys in this audio recording. So I just wanted to share this with you, and I hope you enjoy.
What do I desire? Well, when we answer that question in a naive way, we figure out that we want to desire, what we want is to control everything. To create girls that don't grow old, apples that don't rot, clothes that never wear out, conveyances that get from one place to another instantly so we don't have to wait, power available to do anything that you could conceive and do it just instantly like that. To get this funny technological omnipotence. But if you take time out to think about that, and really go into it with your full strength of imagination, and find out whether that's where you want to be, you will soon see that's not what you want. Because the moment you have a situation where you are really in control of things, that is to say, in which the future is almost completely predictable, you will see, as I said last night, that a completely predictable future is already the past. You've had it. And that's not what you wanted. You want a surprise. And you don't know what that's going to be, because obviously it wouldn't be a surprise if you did. You want a pleasant surprise. But like you say, what sort of a surprise would be pleasant? And you can't really answer that. Because you know, if there are to be such things as pleasant surprises, there must also be unpleasant surprises. There must be rude shocks. So you're like somebody taking one of those wishing well boxes, tubs, where you fish in and you bring out a package. And you don't know whether you've got a dead rat in it or a new camera. And that's the way, that seems to be the thing that really excites people. But quite certainly there comes out of this inquiry a feeling of real disillusionment with the ideal of power. To be in power, to be in control, is not something that any sensible person wants. Imagine the situation of Big Brother. Mr. J. Edgar Hoover, Heinrich Himmler, to be glued day and night to a highly defended office with telephones, television screens, watching, peeking, spying on everyone and anything, getting all this information together. Why? You could never leave the office. I mean, the character, I suppose, like J. Edgar Hoover, goes home in the evening, and but when he's back home, there are guards sitting outside the door. There's that hotline telephone going to something. He's always having to be in control. And he can't take any time off. He can't go for a walk in the park with a friend, or go innocently to the movies, or sit down and just relax and have an undistracted party in the baths at Big Sur. Here, what a pauper this guy is. Completely deprived. Because he wants to be in control, because he wants power. People are frustrated in love. If you're jilted, there's a natural tendency in a human being to seek power as a substitute. And that's a very negative thing. It's like having a bad temper. To seek power after you're frustrated in love, you should try and get back on the love beam. Because nobody wants power. Now you may say that's shirking responsibility. That if you were a really responsible person, you would go out for power and try to use power to the best possible advantage for the benefit of all. All right, what would be the benefit of all? Ask them. What do you want me to do with this power? I'm dictator. What would you like me to do? Well, nobody knows, because they haven't thought it through. They think of all sorts of short-range things, and they are largely conflicting and confusing, because they're not well thought out. But again, when it finally comes down to it, nobody wants to be God. Now then, when Oriental philosophy and religion was first introduced to the Western world, it was introduced under the auspices of people who were fascinated with power. It was introduced in the latter part of the 19th century, when we had heard all about evolution and how the human race was going on to ever greater heights, and we would eventually develop Superman, according to Nietzsche or G.B. Shaw, and H.G. Wells. Remember all that early fantasy of where evolution would lead through the development of technology. And so at this time, people like H.P. Blavatsky were talking about the mysterious wisdom of the East. And they phrased it, they commended it to us in a technological spirit. That there was psychic technology. That there was something that you could go way beyond anything that could be done through the physical sciences. You could cause your physical body to disintegrate to another level of vibration, and then transmit it and reassemble it somewhere else. You could live as long as you liked because you control the fundamental processes. You could determine, if you decided to die, where you would be reborn, exactly. You would be a complete master of life. And so there are still innumerable books being sold which present Oriental philosophy and religion in this light. That charlatan Lobsang Rampa, who writes about Tibetan mastery. People read that because they think that there may be a way of beating the game. So therefore, the wise men of Asia were represented through this kind of propaganda as masters of life, as, for example, people whose emotions didn't bother them, who could put up with any amount of pain by simply turning off their feelings, who could foretell the future, who could read your thoughts, and who were above all kinds of ordinary human frailty. Well, when I first met Buddhist priests, Zen masters, swamis, all these wise men from the East, one of the first things that impressed itself upon me was that they were perfectly ordinary human beings. They had bad tempers. They were fussy about certain things. They just acted as I would expect human beings to act. And so at first I was very disappointed. I thought they had feet of clay, that they didn't come up to these promises of psychotechnology. But after a while I got to realize why not, that they had already thought all that through. They had thought through what might be done if one had all these powers, and had decided that wasn't what they wanted. The powers of this kind in Sanskrit are called siddhi, S-I-D-D-H-I. But there is hardly one decent scripture or text on yoga that does not say again and again, if you get siddhi, ignore them. Go on to something else. These are only the foothills. These are, furthermore, not only foothills, but they are seductive, blind alleys. Won't take you anywhere at all. Now, I think that this is the greatest possible lesson for the Western world to learn, because we are so hung up on the idea of power, of control, of being able to make everything go the right way, and we've never thought it through. When you get control of it, what are you going to do with it? If you understand, first of all, that you don't want absolute power, you don't want absolute control. You want, yes, some control. You see, we always love controlling something that's not really under our control. Remember, I gave you the illustration right in the beginning of holding a gyroscopic top and feeling sometimes you're with it, but sometimes it's alive under your hand. And this sensation, too, you often get, say, in driving a car or something like that. It's more or less under your control, but on the other hand, it isn't. And that's the beautiful thing, because when something is partly under your control, but isn't, then you have the same sort of relationship with it that you have when you have someone you love, some other person. They are partly under your control because they've agreed to live with you and go along with you and so on, but also they're not. And the measure to which they're not is the measure to which they seem really alive to you. So then, we ask the question, if the motivation of power gaining disappears, you've seen through it and you know that's not what you want, what other motivation takes its place as the origin of actions? And it seems to me that the answer here is compassion. Simply because when you want to relate to another living being, what you really are asking of them is that they be in the same situation that you are. You want to meet and encounter someone else who has your problems, your fears, and your delights. You don't want a doll. You want another you, another self. Because that would be at least as surprising to you as you are. And so then at once, that when you see that that is the case, and that the most interesting thing in the world is the relationship with these others, and you can see at once yourself in the situation of all the other people. And then you think, no, I don't want to control these people. I would like them, yes, to be controlled in the sense that they were happy to do the things I would like them to do. But obviously I can't force that, because if I forced it, they wouldn't be happy. See, when you marry someone, when you have a family, you want your children, you want your relatives, you want your wife, etc., to be happy to do the things for you that they do. And so we say to each other, would you like to bring the washing in? And very often the answer is no. but I will. Because you see, we put it that way because we always hope that the things that we do for each other will be pleasurable to both sides. So a school teacher will get up in class and says, "What nice boy will clean the blackboard for me?" All these ways we use of trying to get voluntary cooperation, willingly given help. That's what we look for. But there is, despite the lot of foolishness that goes on, this is a sound thing, you see, that there really is no greater satisfaction that you can imagine than that kind of personal relationship wherein you can trust a being who is other than you and not under your control to do for you what you want, because they like it. As you, on your side, would want to do something for them in that way, and so as to give pleasure to the other person. Let's take in sexuality, where you get a kind of a critical example of this. The biggest fun in sexual relationships is giving orgasm to women. And if that doesn't happen, many men feel disappointed. Because the thing that they really wanted to do was to give pleasure and get their own pleasure out of giving it. Now that's compassion, in the real sense of the word. Feeling with and through someone else. Where the whole trick is that you lose control for a while of the situation and say, "I throw the ball to you, now it's yours." Now, I may seem, therefore, as a result of talking in this way, to be talking like a Jewish or a Christian theologian. Because that's what they say about God. That God did something called kenosis in the beginning of all time. Kenosis is a Greek word meaning self-emptying, self-sacrifice, giving up, and thereby conferred freedom of will and the power to love on angels and human beings. And therefore took a terrific risk by trusting the other, by trusting a principle called other that's not under your control. With God, of course, it is ultimately under his control, but he sits back and smokes a cigar sometimes and lets it go. See what the children will do. Like DeLorme in Green Pastures, a big cigar. So, but you see, it's really in a way the same idea as the Hindu idea. When the Christian speaks of God giving the creature freedom of will, the Hindu says, no, God gets lost in that person and gives up power. And it's really the same thing. It's the idea that the all-powerful surrenders power. So that the more you give the power away, what you're really doing is you're othering yourself. Now, the more you other yourself by giving power away, the more of a self you are. Because self and other are reciprocal. So you find that people who through a sadhana, a yoga discipline, have overcome their ego, have transcended the ego, are tremendously strong personalities. You would think, theoretically, they would all be non-entities, and to lack entirely what psychologists call ego strength. But actually, they're nothing of the kind. They are, every one of them, unique. They're all quite different from each other. And they are very, very, what I would call strong characters. Because the more they have given it up, the more they get it. So, in this way of thinking, let's put it in another dimension for the moment. Let's suppose we are thinking of a relationship that is not just to people. People are very obviously other and independent of one's ego. But give it to everything. Say to everything, which in course is going to include as much of yourself as you can objectivize. In other words, your stomach, your intestines, your everything, see? Say to it all, now it's your turn. Let's see what you're going to do. Let it happen. You know, you do this complete let-off of control. And you find that I have to put it in a provisional way first. You get the sensation that that everything else is living you. It lives you.
So if you thoroughly understand and go into the dynamics of power, you will begin to feel a very strange thing, which is that if you think exhaustively about what you would like, it will come approximately close to what you are and where you are. Now, you perhaps would not agree with me if you were very sick and in great pain. But I will only ask, how do you know you're sick? You know it, of course, by contrast with other states of feeling. Those states of feeling would not have seemed to you like health in a world where the possibility of sickness was absent. The contrast may be provided to you by the sickness of other people, or it may be provided to you through anticipation of or memories of your own sickness. But just as the realization of being comes from the pressure, as it were, of two opposed forces, so health requires sickness, and sickness requires health to be experienced. Integration implies disintegration, implies integration. So that's the kind of a system in which we have involved ourselves, and you can see that you cannot conceive of any other system. It's simply impossible to think about. It's an inconceivable energy pattern. You always require the yang and the yin. That may have something to do with the fact that we are a symmetrical organism, with the two lobes of the brain mirroring each other, crossing their nerves, and two sides of the body approximately mirroring each other. And it may be due to that, it may be due to the fact that our neurons fire either a yes or a no. That is to say, they either transmit or don't. 0 or 1. That may be the reason why we have to think in that way. But then, if I say we have to think in that way, who is compelling us? Do you see that in common speech, in an expression like, I have to do it that way, there is no other way, and the sense of feeling, I'm commanded, I'm compelled, goes back to the notion that there is some exterior force, God, instinct, fate, or whatever you want to call it, that shoves me around and makes me do it like that. Because you thought, that's not the way I wanted to go. But if you think more deeply, you will see that is the way you wanted to go. That is the situation, the kind of total energy field with these, shall I say, laws, although that's a terribly misleading word because it always implies the lawmaker. But that is the character of the energy system in which you're involved. And that is you. Your body is a total exemplification of it. So if you get sick and you say, damn it, I don't want to be sick. Actually, you do. Because your whole being is sick. And very often you know the cases when you've been burning the candle at both ends and doing too much and trying, in other words, to grab too much power, and you suddenly get sick. Because your nature says you must stop. You must take stock of things, you must come to your senses because you're out of your mind. And therefore it arranges for you to be sick. I've noticed this dozens of times. When I was working too hard, giving too many lectures, I get a vague feeling of disliking doing some of these things, and there's no way of begging off except by getting sick, because getting sick is a perfect excuse. Everybody accepts it. See, supposing I felt very tired before I came down here this weekend, and thought, what would happen if I had to just didn't want to go? Well, I'd be inconveniencing all these people, and poor Esalen people would have to get on the telephone and start calling around, and lots of them would be already on the way and they couldn't reach them. But supposing I couldn't go, I mean, supposing I was laid flat on my back after a heart attack, well, then everybody would feel very sorry for me, and they would feel perfectly, it was quite okay if they went to all this trouble and were disappointed, because it could be ascribed to nature and was not the act of the ego. But you see, if you read the book of Grodek, called the Book of the It, it's a very fascinating book. I don't agree with everything Grodek thinks, but Grodek gave Freud the idea of the unconscious. And the id, calls it in English the it. The Book of the It is in the form of a series of letters written by a goblin called Patrick Troll to a young lady. And it's more Freudian than Freud. It's very, very erotic, very earthy, but it goes deeply into the meaning of illness. He was a great physician, a wonderful masseur. And a friend of mine years ago read that book and said, ever since I read the Book of the It, I have not been afraid of being sick.
We see, don't we, all that we experience is understandable as a spectrum of vibrations. There are different kinds of spectra. There's the spectrum of light, there's the spectrum of sound. We can also think of spectra of smells, of tactile feelings, of emotions, and so on all down the line. We are, as it were, living in the midst of a woven tapestry of many dimensions in which the warps and the woofs are all these different spectra of various kinds of vibrations. And as on the loom, the warp crosses the woof, and if you didn't have one, you wouldn't have the other. It takes two to reveal the pattern. So see yourselves as patterns in a weaving system. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for the interlocking of all these different spectra dimensions. So then, here they go, and these things are vibrating. Now, when it reaches a certain point, you say, oh, that's too much. When it reaches another point, you say, it's not enough. Why, there's nothing here. I don't feel a thing. No, I'm going to go to sleep. But on the other end, you say, no, you're going far enough. If you go any further, that's going to tear things apart. I can't withhold this tension, see? Now, so some people will say, all right, now relax, take it easy. But often you see the point is you can't do that. So then, what I will say to the person who cannot relax, I will stress his tension. Go the other way. In other words, go with the line of least resistance. Say, okay, you're tense about all this. Now let's get really tense. Let's scream. No. See, get violent inside. This is not to happen. See? But so that one way or the other, you see, it doesn't matter which you go, you'll begin to get into this thing. Which is what is happening when the boat of life begins really to rock. Get rocking with it by whatever way is open. But you are not going to force the issue here. Instead of saying to you, you should be doing it another way than you're doing it, I will be saying, now find out the way you must do it and go that way. Now, this is a general principle of an art. And we will find there is a kind of, there are limits to this art and how it can be used and so forth. But once the general principles are clear, there aren't many serious problems left. That if you begin to look at it in that way, you will begin to realize that ecstasy, by one road or another, is inevitable. That indeed ecstasy is, in a way, the nature of existence. There is a universe for the simple reason that it's ecstatic. What else is all this fireworks about? I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream at night any dream you wanted to dream. And you would, of course, be able to alter your time sense